to the DNA. Thank you for the reminder, you guys. I'm so sorry. I record these meetings and I totally forgot to hit record.
We got it, Kelly.
Okay, perfect. I was like, I'm going to start over, but perfect. Good morning. So we put it in historical context. So we trace the oldest documentable ancestor. And then we put it in historical context of the events that were happening and taking place at the time of that ancestor and the impact that it had on the ongoing legacy. So as part of that, we do what we call legacy tracing, which is teaching people how to do their own research, because research takes a lot of time. One, it's never done. And when you hire a researcher, oftentimes they're going to give you exactly what you've already found. You have to really focus your dollars on somebody who's going to give you information that is on the ground in the location where you are researching is the best use of your dollars when you are paying someone else to help you with research, is looking for specific documents. And we'll talk about that some more. But you can also keep up with our genetic legacy at our website on ourgeneticlegacy.org. We also are asking that you help to promote OGL. Take a screenshot during the presentation, tag us. These are our different social media handles, and also tag the Creative Mornings Field Trip with CM Goes Virtual. It's just to help get the word out there and promote both of our platforms and further our respective missions. And now we will get into questions. Please, please, please ask questions. Put those in the chat. Alexa is monitoring that chat. I have a Google Doc. There will be points where I will stop and ask questions. I have been told that I am long-winded on my answers, so I will try to put a time limit on that first question and answer period of probably 5 to 7 minutes, just so that we can make sure to get through the entire presentation. And at the end, I will ask questions again. So the first thing, when we're talking about getting DNA testing and how to determine what DNA test is worth, what's worth the money. In my opinion, it is not worth it to pay for traits. 23andMe, primarily, some of the other sites are now starting to do personality traits. And the reason for that is it's very arbitrary. This is some traits from my 23andMe. It says fear of heights. Yeah, that's true, but I've also skydived. So it's kind of like, it doesn't really add any information for, the cost. And when we're talking about long-term research, the cost can get extremely expensive. So you really want to be mindful of where you spend your dollars. And traits really does not offer any genealogical relevance that's going to help you with your actual research. Those that offer haplogroups, those are important. It's more important when you get into when you really start getting far back, because haplogroups are based, there's a maternal haplogroup and a paternal. 23andMe gives you your haplogroup. I believe Family Tree DNA, when you do the Y DNA test or the mtDNA test, which we will talk about, those give you the haplogroup. And that will allow you to determine where your maternal line originates. And so you see it starts off at L, and as it continues down, if there's slight variations over time. So now I'm at L0A1A, which means that my maternal line originates in, I believe it's not South Africa, but Southern Africa. And so 17,000 years ago, my maternal ancestor was an African woman from that era. It is likely that with European Americans, the majority of them are going to have European haplogroups. 1% of European descendants will have an African maternal or paternal haplogroup. For African Americans, it's more likely that 80% will have a maternal African matrilineal haplogroup, but the paternal haplogroup, there's a higher probability that it will be a white male. That's just based on the continuing legacy of enslavement. When we're looking at ethnicity estimates, a lot of people get really, really, really caught up in the ethnicity estimates. What you have to understand is that there are 7.8 billion people in the world as of yesterday when I looked at the Worldometers info. 23andMe uses 14,437 samples. to represent the entire population of the world. And that is what your DNA is being compared to, how your ethnicity estimates are being calculated. So you have to put it all with a grain of salt, and depending on where you are looking for your ancestry to be from, you need to look and see what tests actually have a data set from that area. And if it's a, far back, there's a very good chance that it's going to be lumped in to another ethnic category. So you really do not get over invested in that part. Ancestry, they have 56,580 DNA samples for their data set that they test against. You need to see is the difference over the years. Those are the current numbers. Up until 2013, Ancestry only had 3,000 people in their data sets and the reference set that they were using to compare in order to determine your ethnicity. So that's why in 2018, there was a drastic jump because they had increased their data set to 16,000. They are now, like I say, up to 56,000. 23andMe is not making as many jumps in terms of their numbers. They were at 11,000. And now, like I say, according to their website, I think what I say was like 16,000. So that's just things, and Family Tree DNA, Living DNA, and MyHeritage, none of those give you any information regarding who they are referencing, what their data set size is, nor their specific populations that they are trying to represent. You see here where Living DNA does have an emphasis in the UK, as does MyHeritage. They're typically better known in Europe. They are now building their local database, local in terms of being United States. I know that some of us are not in the US, and I have to be more mindful of that when I am speaking. So please do not be offended. Then we talk about chromosome browsers. A lot of people don't know what to do with the chromosome browser or why it's important. Ancestry does not have a chromosome browser. 23andMe does, MyHeritage does. And what that allows you to do is to look at exactly where you overlap with another person, what chromosome that is on. So if you and a person, this is my shared DNA with my great aunt who is about to be 100 years old. And so this shows everywhere where we have overlap. So if I'm looking at someone that is a shared match to the two of us, more likely than not, they're going to still show up in here. But let's say it's one of her children. In the absence of her DNA, and I was comparing it to one of her children, I would be trying to figure out where do we overlap to confirm that we're looking for the same ancestor, because we can have a shared group of matches. Like when you're on Ancestry and you share, then you say, who are all the shared matches? It doesn't mean that you match on the same side. So you could be matching, another person could be matching the same person, but one of you are matching on the maternal side, the other on the paternal side. So the way to determine that is to look at the chromosome and to see, do you overlap both people at the same place? And then that would help you to determine what side you match on. So when I tell people when they're looking to spend their hard-earned dollars, I tell them to start with Ancestry. Ancestry is typically $99. You can find it on sale oftentimes for $59. 23andMe is second. That one is generally $99. It was actually just on sale till yesterday for $49, which is actually a price I have never seen for Family Tree DNA. Usually around Christmas time, Amazon Prime Day, you'll see 23andMe go down to $79, but that was the first time I saw it at $49. Family Tree Y-DNA, they are generally between $99 and $300, and Y-DNA is only for male descendants. So that is how you trace your male line. So you want to find a direct line descendant. If you want to know your father's paternal, deep paternal ancestry, you would test him for that. In the absence of the ancestor who's a direct line above you, you can look for, a grandson, can find out about his grandfather's line. that, his father's line. So make sure that you're connecting to that grandson on his paternal side. Because if you're a maternal relative, when you test them, it's not going to match. It's not going to be your ancestry because you're not related to him on the paternal side. Same thing with the maternal DNA is that you can trace that, the maternal line that we were just talking about in terms of haplogroups. And so both of those tests generate haplogroups. Once you do those tests, like I say, Ancestry first, then start looking at 23andMe. What you can do then is GenMatch, GenMatch.com. They allow you to download your raw DNA data. That is one thing that all of the testing sites that I know of allow you to do is when you pay for your test, you can download the raw data, and then other sites will allow you to upload it. So MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, and Living DNA allow you to do free uploads of your DNA, and then you can compare against their databases. GenMatch also has that feature. What GenMatch has in addition is they have a lot of tools. They're a little more advanced, but it'll give you the advantage of the Chromosome Browser that Ancestry does not offer. If you have a match on Ancestry and you're still trying to figure out where you guys are overlapping, how it compares to other people, you want to try to get them on GenMatch, because GenMatch will allow for those uploads and allow for you to do those comparisons. So not only does it increase the number of matches that you now have access to, it also allows you can actually pinpoint it to the exact chromosome spot and find out who all else matches you at that same level. And that may give you the clues that you need to break through some of your brick walls. It's a little more intense. And next year I will be doing a talk strictly on GenMatch and the things that it allows you to do, the tools that it gives you access to. We will now have time for questions. I will look at the chat and see where we are. Does it, or I'm missing, you know what, I'm not looking at the whole chat.
Shelly, do you see the Google Doc?
Yes, I see.
Awesome. So that should have every chat question in it.
Okay, there we go. So Simona asked, to trace info about my maternal great-grandfather, is it better that I, my brother, or my father take a DNA test to upload? Is it the same? It is not the same. You want to test your father in the absence of the generation above you. And by the generation, I mean, we're looking at parents, grandparents. That's how the generational levels are determined. And it's also how, when you're doing the research, it's kind of like, your cousins, like what grandparent do you share? So your father is going to have the most undiluted DNA. Now, if he has siblings, you also want to test them. You want to test his siblings because you want to get as many of the closest relatives to the person you're trying to see. So you want to, like I've tested, in the absence of my grandmother, I've tested 2 of her sisters and all 3 of her children. That will give me the clearest picture of who she is. So like your DNA is going to be a subset of your father's, the same as your brother, where your father might have some DNA that he did not pass to you because of the randomness of DNA inheritance. You get 50% from your mom, 50% from your dad. You do not get to choose which 50%. So you always want to find your oldest ancestor on the line that you are trying to test. And that can even be cousins, aunts and things like that to serve as surrogates for that DNA. Debbie asks, any tips for tracing Asian ancestry? A few years ago, I checked out Family Tree and they didn't have resources for Asians. Specifically, so we do in our book, we have been doing some more research, deep dive, when what we have found is that Ancestry does a good job. When you want to get really specific, you can actually reach out to, amazingly enough, there's like an archive in every country. There's national records and things that you can request access to. So you want to find a heritage society more so than you want to deal with like this Family Tree DNA. That's going to be very more current information more, and it's going to be more US based. It's going to have some of that deep dive history, but not in the way of like records, missing records and names. You want to find some historical societies, whether they be in that foreign country or here in America, to try and get some of that deep dive information. Kelsey, will there be information about tracking through census information and records outside of utilizing DNA? Yes, that's just part of the record keeping. And so the reason why I have such an emphasis on DNA is because, particularly for BIPOCs, we have large gaps in our history that we can't overcome. There are no records. Our ancestors were not listed by name. The DNA then becomes required to find those relatives to fill in those missing gaps. And that's why I always have such an emphasis on using the DNA. But yes, using census records, the way that you're going to use a census record, you want to make sure that you read it. Don't just look at the index. Read the census record, go back, look at it, scroll through, see who's on the first page, on the page with them, who's on the next page. Start looking for familiar names, locations. You can find out a lot of information by actually looking at it. And sometimes things are transcribed incorrectly, or they're not fully transcribed, where they're not, and there's a question on the census that is not in the index or the transcription. So you want to make sure that you look at that census record and actually get that information. Okay, any tips to research DNA for an unknown grandfather? I have father's DNA, but don't know where to go from there, on what site or service program to use. So the first thing you're going to do with that, when you have any unknown paternity situation or maternity, you're going to look at your matches, and you're going to start to categorize your matches into groups. So you know who your maternal side is, or you determine that this is a maternal ancestor, then you're going to highlight that, hit shared matches, and then you're going to put all of those in a category. You can have little colored dots on Ancestry. And then you're going to keep doing that. Now, if you don't know which side is which, then you start looking for shared matches that don't share with the other person. So you just put side A, like all these people are matching these people, but they're not matching them. So this is side A. Then you go to the next person, like, oh, they don't share anybody. You start all this with your top matches, and you just break it down into those groups. And then you try and find out what the commonalities are within those matches. One thing you have to understand as well is that genealogy is a collaborative sport. If you don't participate with other people, it becomes very difficult sometimes to get that information, because if they have an incomplete tree, it's another level of work. I oftentimes find myself making mirror trees. If you find somebody with a tree that only has 3 people in it, but one of those 3 people is the person that you're looking for, but it has a date that you may not have had, you can start to build a tree using records for that person and see if you can find some overlap to determine how you guys might be connected. So that's what I would say, to use GenMatch, Ancestry, like 23andMe. When you're dealing with unknown, you want to be on all the sites. And if you have your father's DNA, another option for that, because that's going to be the paternal side, is to do the Y DNA test with Family Tree Finder. That will give you the long history of his paternal line. So that will also give you some clues. Any suggestions for confirmation of Malagasy ancestry, both with and without DNA? That is not my specialty. That is a whole thing in itself. Message me directly and I will put you in touch with someone who is more versed in that. Liz says, I know some people who are nervous to submit their DNA to these companies because they are just nervous about a corporation having their DNA for fear of it being experimented with and so on. Any insights? I totally get that. There was a time when I was a little leery of doing my DNA after I'd already started doing DNA testing, when I started seeing some of the other things that it was being used for, because it's not what I signed up for. So that's one of the reasons why I do not participate in the traits or the health history. I believe that your genetic health testing should be done with a medical doctor, not with a direct-to-consumer testing company. The other thing about that is you not testing is not going to stop your DNA or someone from being able to find you. Just like we have lots of cases where we find cases of unknown paternity, it's because one of your cousins is tested, and we can triangulate those matches to come down to at least who the grandparents are, and then look and see who their children are to find who that person is. So there's just too much out there right now to, not testing isn't going to stop anything. If they want to find you, they'll find you. Your information is out there. You'd be amazed at, I mean, anybody who has ever done this type of research, when you do a Google search, there's so much information about you just, with your phone number, like your address comes up, your neighbors come up. So it's kind of too late, I guess is the short answer for that. Like if you're here on Facebook or, on Creative Mornings platform, it's too late. So you might as well take advantage of the resources and get the information that you're trying to get, because not participating only denies yourself. It does not deny the government or anyone else who wants to have your information from getting it, because it's already out there. What resources do you use to find a paper trail on your ancestors? We will talk some more about that a little later in the talk. And if you still have more questions, then we can bring those up at the end. Melissa, I'm adopted, so I'm interested in my specific background, but also the possibility of finding biological relatives. I'm Vietnamese American for reference. I would have to see your DNA matches, because that's where it starts. When you say you're interested in your specific background, that's still very vague, because you can get some specifics just based on your ethnicity. That's a case where ethnicity is actually helpful, because you can look at the map, it'll say where those, especially on Ancestry, it has like a little color on the map of where that location is that they are saying that this DNA comes from, and then you can research that locality for additional information. For specific and biological relatives, obviously you're going to get those just from testing, but determining the relationships, once again, comes down to reaching out, doing triangulations, figuring out the closeness of your relatives to determine who the possible common ancestor could be. If you have somebody who comes in at the first cousin level, then you know that you share grandparents. So it's a short walk to figure out which set of grandparents you share. The difficulty becomes when you have half relationships. Half relationships look twice as far back as they actually are. So that is one of the biggest issues with that I have with Ancestry, in terms of how they calculate matches and information that they make available to us. Because especially when you're talking about half relationships, someone can come in at a 7 cm match, which might seem like that's a 4th to 6th cousin, but it's actually your second cousin, because it's a half relationship. And so that makes it very difficult when you're looking for those. But that's what I would say first, is to categorize your matches and see if you can determine who your birth parents are based on the relatives that you have in common. Okay, and then I'm going to stop at right after Tira. Or Tiara, I'm not sure how I'm saying that. So I have 2 questions left, and then we will pick up questions again at the end. Drusilla, I do not have my dad's DNA, and I'm trying to find out who his father is. Where do I start? So in the case, let's say you only have your DNA. You don't have your father. You need to determine if you have any siblings. Does he have any brothers, aunts, uncles, anybody on the side that you are trying to find? Then you want to get those comparisons, find those shared matches, determine who has the higher matches, and you just have to keep working those individual trees until you get to that grandparent level. For him, it would be his father level. For you, would be the grandparent level. So you would be able to get probably a little closer. But that's what I would suggest doing, is to find surrogates for that DNA to build as complete a picture as possible. And it says, which one should a person start with to find a parent? Ancestry. Just because it's the largest database, it's the most user-friendly. 23andMe is next. And then if you have a, if it's a male line, the Y DNA test. Female, obviously that's, if you're looking for a matrilineal ancestor and you're a female, then you would be able to take that mtDNA test. But that's where I would start in terms of working on those. And we will talk about that. Some of these things some more after we get to this slide, which I'm trying to find again. Hold on. I do this every time I'm not. There we go, we're back. So now we will pick up. So learning more about, we were talking about the census records and like, where do all these scans and paperwork, where's all this coming from? It is being stored in the Granite Mountain Records Vault in Utah. It is sponsored by the Church of Latter-day Saints. They strongly believe in maintaining the paper trail to their deceased ancestors. That's how their path to eternal life. Now, mind you, that's the short version. I am not a religious scholar. I'm not Mormon, but that's just my understanding very broadly of why they are so invested in doing all of these records. And then I want to show you guys, I've seen this video, this Granite Mountain Records Vault, and I just need you guys to see this because I'm going to share it.
So the record is FamilySearch, the genealogy of family, sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This program to further the family genealogy stories which is around. The story accessible records of individuals.
Shelly, can I pause real fast? Can you re-click share screen and make sure you have share computer audio selected at the bottom left-hand corner?
Okay, hold on a second.
Or it'll say share computer sound. And if not, that's okay.
Speakers, real text, switch to phone audio, computer audio. Same as system?
So yeah, if you click share screen, the little green button, but also if we can just wait, it's just that folks can't hear the sound, but that's okay too.
No, it's kind of necessary. Oh, I see it. Okay,
Awesome.
found it. Sorry, guys.
No.
We will start it over because it's actually like a pretty fascinating video, at least to me it is. Hopefully you will find this. Start this over.
Then you'll have to reshare the screen. So if you just kind of stop the share completely.
Stop share.
And then go back, click share screen, left-hand corner.
And sound. Okay, I see the sound button. I see this, and I see.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Perfect.
Let's see.
Search, formerly the Genealogical Society of Utah, sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has been gathering, preserving, and sharing the genealogical records of the world. These irreplaceable records tell the stories of individuals, of families, and of nations. These records are brought to the Granite Mountain Records Vault, where 4 key steps of preservation happen. Microfilm masters are preserved and safeguarded. Duplicate copies of microfilm rolls are created and shipped to all parts of the world. Microfilmed records are converted to digital images, making them more easily accessible. Digital image masters are preserved and upgraded as technology changes. We are going to take a look behind the vault door and give you a glimpse of a place few people will ever get to see. It's a whirlwind tour, but you will get to see where the work happens of preserving these important genealogical records. The organized effort to gather these records began in 1894. At first, the collection consisted primarily of books. Then in 1938, microfilming began. By the early 1950s, it became clear that a permanent facility was needed to store and protect the growing collection of microfilms. The site that was chosen is located in the mountains near Salt Lake City, Utah. Exploratory work at the site began in 1958. Construction got underway in 1960, and the project was finished in 1965. The vault was designed to protect the collection of genealogical records from decay, natural disasters, and man-made calamities. Let's go inside. The vault lies under more than 700 feet of solid mountain stone and consists of a series of tunnels. The vault comprises over 65,000 square feet. Near the front of the facility is an operations area with workspace for about 60 staff members. Beyond the workspaces are tunnels that lead to 6 storage areas. The tunnels are 25 feet wide and 15 feet high. Entrance to the 6 archive areas is guarded by heavy vault doors. Nature helps keep the underground temperature inside the vault at a consistent 55 degrees year-round. Relative humidity is controlled at 35%. An elaborate circulation and filtering system keep fresh air moving through the storage area and minimizes dust and other airborne particles. Under these ideal conditions, it is anticipated that microfilm can last 300 years. At the back of the vault, the mountain provides a natural source of pure spring water, which feeds a 33,000-gallon reservoir. The water collected in this reservoir is utilized in microfilm reproduction and other processes in the vault. The natural features of this mountain, together with human ingenuity and foresight, have combined to create ideal storage conditions for these priceless records. Deep inside the mountain are 6 archival chambers, carved from granite and lined with steel. The records will be secure here for generations to come. Approximately 3.5 billion images on 2.4 million rolls of microfilm and a growing collection of digital media are stored in these massive vaults. There is still more room to grow. For over 100 years, FamilySearch, formerly the Genealogical
That is the archive. That is where all of these documents are being stored. I just find it amazing that they actually blew out a whole mountain that supposedly will withstand a nuclear attack. I think it's on the number 3 on the top 10 list of most secure places in the world. So a lot of time and effort has been put into preserving these records, and these records are available for free. So someone was asking about FamilySearch earlier. Their site, it's a little clunkier than Ancestry. It's, it's not as sexy, so to speak, in terms of ease of use, but it does have all the free access. Now, when you're accessing from home, there'll be times when you can't see the record. If you go to a family history library, which they're all over really the world, you could actually see the actual document. It is important whenever possible to see the actual document, even when you're on Ancestry. Ancestry, all the major search sites get their documents from FamilySearch. They are the grandparent, so to speak, of ownership of these documents. Even the National Archives uses some of their documents are from FamilySearch. So you want to, as part of their religion, like it's a specific calling, the people that help with the genealogy research. So if you contact someone at your FamilySearch, your local history center, they're very helpful, and they will try to help put you in contact with, the appropriate people to help you with your research. Now with COVID, I know my local history centers are reopened. I do not know if the main library in Utah is open. I'm assuming that it is, but I actually have not checked. And at that library, they have basically a copy of every single file that they have a copy of. So whatever is in the vault in the mountain, they have a copy. And they have a very complex system of keeping track of all of the records and the timing they've developed a way to give perfect pictures so that you don't lose clarity with, reproduction. And all the documents are there where your local family history center may only in-house have microfilm for specific to that location. I know back when I wanted my great-great-grandfather's death certificate, I had to order the film from Utah to be sent here, which they did do. But now that they have been digitizing so many more records, a lot more of those are available online. So if you see something on Ancestry that has an index, but it has an FHL number, FHL stands for Family History Library. That means that there is an image that you can find. So a lot of times what I'll then do is go online to FamilySearch.org, put in the information in terms of the name, dates, and that FHL number. That will let you know whether or not you can have access to that from home, because some of those records you can only access from their actual authorized computers. But it is worth making the trip to a local family history center to get those documents, because oftentimes they are mistranscribed, or there's information that's just not part of the index in terms of when you're looking for the next generation. Like, so when I did mine, looking for my great-great-grandfather, the index did not have any information about his parents. When I was able to get the actual record, his parents were listed. So that took me back a whole nother generation to my third great-grandparents. It also will give you some information in terms of like death. Times it will have like who the informant is. That can become important, because you have to realize that these are people giving this information and they don't always know. It could, so a lot of times you'll get older records where it literally says don't know for who the parents are. And it's just based on who the informant is. So that's another thing to be mindful of, because it can also signify relationships, whether it be, close family member or, close family friend, based on the amount of information they know and the names that you see. National Archives, that's another huge database. Lots of government documents. Those who, subscribe to Fold 3, this is, the archives has all of those documents. It's just that they're not, it's not the quick and easy when you're dealing with archival research. It's oftentimes it's a lot more digging than it is. That's what the benefit of Ancestry and like Fold 3, where how to justify that expense is, it makes a lot of those searches easier because they're more in tune with how to, that's the performance aspect. Chronicling America is an online, same thing, that's Library of Congress. It's newspapers. I believe it goes from I got to write it down. Oh, no, here it is, 1777 to 1963. It has newspapers. So you can go in there, put in the, the name of the location and the approximate date, and find out what the newspapers of the area were. And you may be able to find out additional information that way to give you more hints on where to look next. Because when you hit your roadblocks, that's when the real deep dive, research comes into play. Wherever that roadblock is, whether you hit it at the parent level or your third great-grandparent level, that's when, the tediousness of the research, where you stay up all night looking for, did I check here? Did I check there? Trying to find a name or just some information to give you the next clue on where to go. So these are free search engines that are very good. The best database that keeps track of just pretty much anything genealogically related would be Cindy's List. It is a free site. It is a little clunky and it does have ads, but once again, you get what you pay for. You actually get way more than you pay for because it is free, so it's worth the ads. So as you can see here, just in this simple screenshot, they have a thing for, Acadian, Cajun, and Creole, adoption, Africa, naturalization and citizenship, New Zealand, newspapers, numbering system. They have just a ton of resources. And when you click on it, it'll give you other, potential resources to give you some direction. And so when you're looking for some specific information, this is just, it's an amazing resource that they continue to update on a regular basis, and just has a lot of directions that you can get to help you with your search. As far as software goes, Excel. A lot of people, if you're a spreadsheet person, use Excel. You can create spreadsheets. There are some tricks you can Google on how to be able to download some of your ancestry information by downloading the GenMatch into an Excel file. You can download your matches. Ancestry used to have a more friendly system in terms of where you could have plugins that allowed you to download. They stopped doing that a couple of years ago. So it's a little more work, but it can be done. What's important is that you save everything on your own computer or in your own cloud device. Do not rely on Ancestry to maintain your tree, because the issue with that becomes if you have periods of, like I tell people, pay when you know you're going to be researching. So Ancestry has, 6-month membership. So pay for it during a time when you know you're going to have time to do that research. Don't let that money just sit. But you also, when that membership expires, subscription expires, you will not have access to those records in your tree without an unpaid subscription, even if when you created the tree, you had access and you paid for it. So that's where Legacy Family Tree and Family Tree Maker, those are local on your computers, downloadable software programs that you can download your tree. They both interface with both FamilySearch and Family Tree Maker is Ancestry. Legacy is done by MyHeritage. So there is a free version of Legacy Family Tree, but for the more advanced options, you would need to pay, and it's only $34.95 for the program. Family Tree Maker is $79. They allow you to download and to merge your trees and to keep them synced so that you can work both online and offline, but it also downloads all the documents that you are finding so that you're not constantly repaying just to get access to those, because as time has gone on, the restrictions in terms of access with unpaid membership continue to increase. Most recently, there are sometimes when, Ancestry does have some free collections. They've recently made the Freedmen's Bureau collection free for all users to be able to research, which has been an invaluable resource for me personally, even though I already have a paid membership, but the information that I found just this past week, which I will probably share in a minute, is nothing short of amazing to me. Databases. So there's genie.com. That's another website where they're building a world tree is their goal. So they have from free to $119.40 per year for membership. The free allows you to upload your tree. It allows some limited interaction with other users up to the $119.40, which gives you access to some MyHeritage information, because MyHeritage is actually their parent company. And so that kind of helps you too when you're looking at some of these programs. Like if you're invested in MyHeritage, then the Legacy program is probably going to be best for you, because that's who developed that program. So it's going to be the most user-friendly for MyHeritage. Family Tree Maker is an Ancestry program. So there's going to be, more user-friendly with Ancestry. And then for MyHeritage now actually offers documents similar to what Ancestry does, and their cost is between $129 to $299 a year, depending on the level of access you want. Ancestry does have some collections that are exclusive to them. They're through FamilySearch.org, but they are exclusively available through Ancestry. That's some of the partnerships and the way that they have structured it. So there's always, people doing things, but I've also seen it where there's a lot of Facebook groups for genealogy on Ancestry. And I've seen it where people don't have paid memberships and ask somebody to do a lookup for them. Hey, can somebody find this document for me and send it to me? It happens, quite frequently. Genealogists, those who are actively doing it, especially those in these Facebook groups, are very friendly, really wanting to share. They want you to have the information. So they will do whatever they can to help you, including some of these unknown parentage cases, those questions that we had. Find groups on Facebook that will help you. One is, I think it's Adoption Search Squad. That's what it is, Search Squad. That is the best one for adoption. And I will be publishing more of those too. So it's not too late. Follow, share, and like. Here's our, our social media handles. And then we are going to go to questions. I'm going to pull up the document again. I'm actually going to stop sharing screen because it's not necessary anymore. And I'm going to pull up our document. Okay. What steps should I take to find other possible descendants of my great-grandfather? Beyond DNA, if you're looking for a paper trail, it would be actually going to the last known location, to those courthouses, and taking the time to literally go through those documents. Some people might think like, oh, I'm not going to find anything. It's been so long, or I don't have access. So for my particular family, it's from Choctaw County, Alabama. In 2015, a DNA cousin of mine and I went to the courthouse, and we actually found a letter from 1873 written to my third great grandmother. So there's documents there to be found, and the genealogical records are generally open. It's, you ask them at the courthouse and they'll let you into the room where they have those older records because of, Freedom of Information Act and all of that. They are publicly available. So they just let you in there and you can scroll through and find information. If you know where your grandfather lives, so the courthouse, there's property records. You have a census record. Look and see where that location is. What is that post office? What was that district? Where was he? And find out where those records are being stored. And you can also find out information in terms of, ownership, in terms of property, where he was living. Did he rent? Did he own? Who did he buy it from? Who bought it next? All that information is in the courthouse. And that's also where you want to go for, basically it's probate information. So if you're looking for a local researcher, you want somebody who knows how to deal with probate records, because that's where you're going to find your land, property, and tax records. And they're going to know how to find that and maximize your dollar versus spending a lot of time finding things that are already available online. So you want to make sure to do that. What is a DNA surrogate? So by DNA surrogate, that's where my grandmother's deceased. I can't get her DNA. So the closest thing I can get to her is her children. So I test all 3 of her children. In the absence, same thing in the absence of my father. I'm testing all the relatives around him because that's how I'm going to have to build that picture. I don't have his actual DNA. So that's what I mean by surrogate, someone who is in the direct line of the ancestor that you're trying to, the level you're trying to research. Why, it says my second great grandfather's death certificate, maternal side, list of birthplace that is seemingly no longer in existence. Any suggestions how to find archival info about this town inhabitants? Yes, look for a genealogical society in that local area, because that place has been absorbed by another more modern place. And it's just a matter of figuring out where that is. And so what I would do is determine if you can, whatever major cities might be around that area, check there, or even call a local courthouse in that area and say, I'm looking for records from XYZ area. They can tell you what courthouse those records went to. Because I've had that with my relatives in Choctaw. There's 2 different courthouses, just as borders and things changed, where those documents went. This FamilySearch.org started self-populating my family tree once I had entered my great-grandparents. How accurate do you think that is? I always say take any and all pre-populated information, whether it be FamilySearch, or, you know, Ancestry, another user tree, always verify for yourself because people make mistakes. New information becomes available. That might've been the best information at the time. More records, you know, they're still continuously indexing records from the late 1800s. The Freedmen's Bureau records are from, you know, 1865 to 1872, I think it was. They just now, you know, they're still indexing those. So we're still getting that information. So you want to constantly keep checking back for additional information, but that's what I would do for family, you know, when you're creating a tree, always verify for yourself, always, always. Do you have any recommendations for where to get help preserving your own historic documents? I have a collection of my grandmother's diaries and then all kinds of other documents dating back to at least 1852. Yes, the Library of Congress, the archives, you can create your own, they allow for community uploads. We are in the process of creating our own collection box for OGL to have those documents, but you know, you want to look at a university, like where those documents are closest related to, and find an archive that you can trust. And, you know, usually it would generally be a school, a university, or something like that, where you know that they have the infrastructure in place for long-term preservation. What about links for non-US people? That's what I was saying with the Cindy's list gives a lot of those. There's a lot of specific Facebook groups. There's lots of resources. So just saying like non-US is kind of broad, but what I would say is look for Facebook groups, look for historical societies in the areas, wherever that area is, because they're everywhere in the world. It's not specific to US. That's just where my frame of reference is based on my most common research. Drusilla says, does it matter what city the Family History Library is in, or do they all have the same info? It only matters in terms of non-digitized documents, generally because they can't maintain access, you know, storage for all the documents. Usually they only have on-site documents specific to their local area, but that's why you can get microfilm shipped in between libraries. And now that they're going all digital, a lot of those documents are online. So there's a lot more access where it more mirrors the actual full collection. Catherine would also love to hear suggestions on workflow or process. That is, the first thing I do when I get new DNA is I start to categorize. I start to create my subgroups, figure out, excuse me. You know, like if I know that, oh, here's my maternal first cousin showing up, I'm gonna get all those shared matches, I'm gonna put them in a group. I wanna start categorizing so that I can start, when I'm doing my analysis, I can go into the actual group and that's specific to that line, and it's not as many, so it provides a clearer picture. So I'm gonna say that's my first process, is to start categorizing the matches. Drusilla says, what was the name of the place to look on Facebook? Just search the groups. I'm not sure if that was regarding the search squad or another group, but there are, I'm going to, for all those who sign up for my newsletter through artandlegacy.org, or you can just send me a message. I can send you a list of the Facebook groups that I use and the specific specialties that they're in. And any suggestion for best paths for unearthing a mother line? I'm having challenges with losing the line through women's married names. That's where the mtDNA test can come in handy, because it traces the maternal line far back, and then you can start to find some of those commonalities. But yeah, it is, excuse me, difficult, and that's also too why the DNA becomes important when you're doing the maternal lines, because once again, you have a loss of a name that you're trying to recover. Maggie, so if we don't have a good place to pass on your family archives of military, World War II scrapbooks, property deeds, family Bibles, and that kind of crazy stuff, is there a place to donate that information that it's not lost in the historical record and might help that you have no idea who wants the stuff you were sitting on? I would find a university. All the universities have major research arms. So you want to find the university closest to the area that you are connected to. And they can also tell you, oh, we do want it or we don't want it, or give you suggestions on where to go. I just think it's extremely, 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 extremely important to not get rid of them. Somebody will want that information one day. One quick story is my great uncle, who lived to be 105. We had done a project with him recording his stories. So as I was building OGL, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was to digitize those cassette tapes. So I called my cousin like, hey, you know, where are those tapes? I'm gonna pay to get them digitized. He tells me my cousin threw them away because she said that nobody uses cassette tapes anymore. So that was a firsthand account of a man who grew up like, you know, lived to be 105, served in many wars, was a dynamic storyteller. And they had tapes and tapes that are now gone. So somebody wants them, even if you talk to your local family history center, see if they'll take them. They also keep some private documents that they digitize. I don't know the criteria for that, but there's definitely somebody out there. It's just really important to make sure that you preserve it and that it's publicly available. Because when it maintains in the private sector, generations down the line will not have access to that information, and DNA can only do so much. We also have to be mindful when we're looking at the DNA, you will not match 50% of your fourth cousins, your biological full fourth cousins. You will not match 50% of them because of the random inheritance of DNA. So that's the other reason for testing multiple people, because one cousin might have got something that you didn't get. You know, one person got this, but didn't get that. And so you need to build that full picture. So in my case, we were talking about the Freedmen's Bureau records. I have had a brick wall at my third great grandfather. I had his name and had, you know, everybody from after that, but not before. The Freedmen's Bureau records recently came, the new indexing. I was able to find a labor contract. It had his name and another man's name on there. It was a white man, same last name, 1867. So the initial assumption is that there had to be obviously some relationship, same last name. Whether or not he was a former enslaver or a father, we don't know. But because of the DNA and the fact that even though it was a distant half relationship, my father inherited the piece of DNA necessary to confirm that that is indeed my fourth great grandfather. So that's what I mean about, you know, the odds of me being able to find that with only having that one sample. I would not have expected that because of my mother's side. I have probably 20 tests that I manage and I still can't figure it out. So it was just time for his line to be found. And that's what a lot of the work is for me. It's like the ancestors will speak to you if you give them the platform, the opportunity to make themselves known, but you just have to be diligent and just keep looking and keep talking and keep sharing. And that's it. And I think that takes us right to 11. So good to see you all. Please come back next month. We're going to do mental health and research because it is a lot of uphill work at times. Like when I just shared the story with the Freedmen's Bureau and my fourth great grandfather. There's a lot of emotional work that takes place too. So please, we'll see you next time. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Shelly. I'm going to give everyone a second to save the chat. And if you want to come off mute and say thank you, you can do that. Shelly's going to be sharing the recording. So that's right? Yeah.
Yes, the recording will be on my YouTube channel. So RG9 Collection. And when we get 100 people following, we can actually customize our name on there. So it's not all these numbers and dashes and.
Oh, let's make that happen. We'll put it in the, Shelly, make sure to remind me to put it in the follow-up email if it's not already there. And then, yeah, if anyone wants to say thank you, please do so now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you. You're wonderful.
Thank you.
Yay. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.